Mic check, 1 2. Vibe check, 1 2. Anyone hear me? I think we're good. Welcome to my existential program, everybody. I'm Chris. I am a co-worker, a worker bee, as an elf of Santa, as you would call me, a sidekick of Thomas. And this is my show where I pontificate and discern different things that are going on in people's lives and culturally and spiritually, and having good discussions with you guys. So it's a bright, chipper Saturday afternoon over here, and we're going to talk about. I'm going to rant a little bit about popularity and um, just give my take on it, and you guys can give yours. Um, I really think this is just another uh, a misunderstood topic. I wouldn't even call it just an 800-pound gorilla in the room because I think many people understand. There's a lot of self-esteem, self-love talk about, life isn't about being popular. And although that's good that people identify the problem very often, it's hard to get people to actually follow the prescription for these problems. And is the prescription good? Uh, Today, I see just this burgeoning addiction, especially via social media, to popularity. And what happens is the young are getting involved, and the young, I think, do understand um, why just constantly living for attention is bad. I don't think they're that dumb, but they don't know what to do for the alternative. That's the problem. Um, I think that's the problem with most people. I don't think we're so completely ignorant that we have no idea. I mean, sadly, there are people that are raised in such superficial environments that they never get a good talking to from their parents. They don't get much depth. But at the same time, I also think people have an instinct. Carl Jung calls it the collective unconscious, as well as just different. There's different levels to our intuition where we do see our brokenness, we do see our weaknesses, but we quickly give up because we don't know how to look at them healthily and respond to them healthily and begin a process of healing. And I'm not talking as if I'm a black belt in any of this. I am quite the opposite. I'm a white belt. I am a I am a spring chicken over here. I am not someone speaking from a complete sense of self mastery, but I have been learning a lot through this channel. I don't need my headphones now because my sound is definitely working through prayer, through my own reflections, and I've just been thinking that there needs to be a whole overhaul. There needs to be a complete redoing of our educational system. You don't know what you don't know. And when you look at our educational system, there's no help in terms of what to do about what's inside here. It's clearly geared towards a corporate, transnational environment where you will become a number just like everyone else. You will do what everyone else tells you to do, and you will think what everyone else tells you to think. And that could include someone with a degree, because the university can easily, a professor can manipulate his students, or a corporation can, or they can use fear. They can use fear to simply shut you down if you want to think outside the box, or in social environments. There's plenty of different kinds of bullies and manipulative people that draw out and feed off this insecurity and build it, and there's just such a mess in people's psyches. They're so unstable. We obviously know that there's a problem with depression, and there's a problem with drug abuse and many other things. And I really think that it's all from this complete dropping of the ball whether it be intentionally or unintentionally, of the fields of psychology, philosophy, and religion, especially, the in terms of the big churches of today, right? I belong to one of them. I belong to the Catholic Church. Um, the mainstream churches have completely turned into social programs, and thus they do not have anything to say, or very little depth to say about the crisis of the soul, which many people on a day-to-day basis do experience, but they've gotten so used to numbing it, they've gotten so used to distracting themselves from it, that I think many have forgotten how their own misery. That's the problem. So, I remember when I was really hooked on. When I was a kid, I would watch all these VCR tapes of old movies, and it was when I was at my most miserable, sickly point in life. And I knew deep down that I was self-medicating and that I was inserting myself into these stories because it's so boring. It's just, I was in such a bad place health-wise. I had nothing else to do. But I didn't really know what to do with myself. I really didn't. I was just a lonely, deprived, depraved kid watching tons of VCR movies, and that's it. Um, I didn't know anything about prayer. I didn't know anything about psychology. I didn't know anything about how to develop inner masculinity, about exercise, about the different kinds of philosophies out there, about just the intimacy of God. All of these things that are supposed to that were given to humanity to help us unwind our helplessness in the universe. Okay, and this this popularity thing that we're always seeing on YouTube and these other streams, is just, I think it's starting to run out of steam because people, um, they see through it, and the very people that are popular on social media are often not very well adjusted themselves. There's a guy called Jeffree Star on here. Look, I know the guy. I know I'm not judging the guy. I don't like to judge people that seem to have issues, but he seems to be the center of this drama. Interesting character, and he has had a seemingly very artificial, broken past about him, and so I'm praying for the guy. I hope that he finds his way, but he has tons of subscribers, and all he does is he stirs up drama, and he's into makeup or something. Um, and he lives off of it. And to me, he doesn't seem like a very happy person. Quite the opposite. Um, I don't see it. And so he has this big California mansion, and he has lots of subscribers. He makes money off. He has enough to make money off of YouTube. And it doesn't look like he doesn't give off the feeling like he's a winner. It really doesn't. It to me, it just seems as if he's just as lonely. He's just a kid inside. He's just as lonely and unbalanced and immature as everyone else around my age bracket, give or take a few years younger or older. Um, so I don't care about popularity, and you shouldn't care because the fruits of becoming popular has no statistical significance to happiness. Um, and what you have to understand is when you see the grass greener on the other side in life, you have to objectively look at it and don't stop dissecting until you have a grounded hypothesis as to why a position is to be desired or this person is happy. Because oftentimes, when it comes to envy, when it comes to insecurity, you can't people are not able to step back. They don't have the attention span or the reflective ability to step back and really dissect what they admire in what they're seeing and divide healthy points from the bad points. Okay, and because there's this like rush to be a certain person and fit a certain mold, you see just nonsense on the internet and in real life. I don't blame the internet completely because this stuff was happening before social media um, came to be, not on such a degree, but before social media, there were the 80s and 90s rock stars. Well, basically, you can see it in any popular modern music, from the Beatles to now, right? The moment there is this idolization of people that Hollywood and the music industry had marketed, there was an instant dumbing down of individuality. Now, even before then, see, this is part of the human condition. You had trends as well. Uh, before Elvis and the Beatles, you had the Frank Sinatra types. The 20s, the 1920s had its own. I like the 1920s style, but it had its own fashion trends. People would talk a certain way. Everyone was smoking up a whole forest. Like those trees were getting knocked off really fast with how much people were. Sorry, it's not trees. Excuse me, smoking up a whole tobacco plantation a day. What am I thinking? I'm thinking of something else. But there's always been this trendiness, this wanting to at least emulate someone that seems to be on top. Before the 20s, there was a Victorian era, and at least in the high mid to high classes of society, economically, you had people wearing the same kinds of clothes. If you were a wealthy person, they would have particular architecture. They would live a very, very frilly, overly complex, bored lifestyle, to be honest. The Victorian era was the beginning of some serious problems in the Enlightenment era. But the list goes on and on. So let's not get too carried away that say, oh, it's the internet's fault. Okay. However, it's the first step, the first peek into the door of this problem of people constantly looking for attention, saying the same opinions over and over again is just it's just out of control. One second, I need to plug in my computer. I thought I plugged it in. Okay. Okay, I'm back. So, what I have to say is if you look at people that are actually interesting, or at least the most interesting, in the higher stratas of popularity, content creators, there's different kinds of content creators on YouTube. There are people that do, well, my style, I'm doing what I naturally do. There are people that are really good at just having um, a basic style. They just film themselves. They have a good camera angle. They use the same place in the room, and they just use their charisma. And they're just funny or interesting people, and they talk about whatever. And that sense of independence and that confidence they give does rack in the views. Now, the people that I follow um, that I look at for entertainment are those kinds of people, but some of them don't have huge subscribers. Okay, there's one guy I follow, Noah for World. He's funny. He does these streams where he just babbles on, talks to his audience about whatever. I obviously don't agree with him ideologically on a lot of things, but he has a laid back, funny, dry humor, and he's a pleasure to be around. He's just the dude. He's the dude. He's better than the Big Lebowski, right? Because that's just a movie character. He's like the living Big Lebowski, except a little bit more insightful and uh, selfless, and he definitely likes to try to encourage people and lift their spirits. but he doesn't have a huge following given his content. You know, he's done a good job, but he's not he doesn't blow the view count away. But I do think that at any given point he could become big. You know, he could become really big and once he makes a viral video. Now I know YouTube has its own priorities and it has this favoritism thing going on. So, but he never made any controversial content. I'm not really sure what the problem is, and he does a lot of he actually did some videos where he was recording um, himself making ads for his content. So beats me. You know, it's a mystery as to why Noah isn't as popular given what people like. He's the very typical uh, early, sorry, young millennial. Like he's definitely younger than me, but he's on the that medium in between Generation Z and millennial, where he still understands the whole college style. You know, he's a little bit of a hipster, but he's self-aware and he makes fun of it too. He's just really good, uh, and that's that's the kind of person that will always succeed even if they have a small audience because they understand quality over quantity. Okay, if you have um, a committed audience of people that love your content, that are their own person and are inspired to carry on your understanding of the world or your style, you are succeeding better than a person who has a gajillion viewers, but people just go, huh, 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 and then they just flip to the next person who's just like that other person, right? Um, they're not making there are people that have a gajillion followers that may have no impact on the world that are like dust in the wind. Let's be real here. Like there's so many. I mean, the what goes on YouTube in terms of there's like certain genres like of entertainment like makeup and gameplay videos. And they're just a dime a dozen. And what's happening there is kids watch it, they take some notes, at least towards the makeup, but it's nothing different from the next makeup or video game channel, and it's often very forgettable. Um, and that's a problem, you know. Even the cooking channels are being oversaturated, you know, because a lot of the recipes are similar, and it takes a lot of creativity to be such an original chef that everyone knows who you are. You know, I mean, really think about who is considered a popular chef, you only come up with a few names, and that's if they do a really good job with their presentation and or their recipes are just so awesome. Like you can't forget it. But again, like they're a dime a dozen these channels. So break the paradigm of how many views you have. Although it's great to have more viewers, you want to leave a legacy, even if it's um, a few people, right? If you know, before the internet, it was considered a big deal to inspire a village of people, which could be up to, you know, it could be at up to maybe 1,000 people in a village or town in back in the day. But if those people had your back and you really changed their lives to the better, I mean that would be just the envy. That would be the thing to be envied before the internet. So if you have 5,000 people or 3,000 people that are truly changed by your style, then you've done more than a million people who just consider you another quick uh, another quick swipe to the left um, in the YouTube recommendation. So that's my first step in the door there as to why this whole thing needs to be looked at again. The second thing is where you have to really take some time off and remember. If you don't remember and if you don't know, you have to kind of get a bit existential with what makes someone truly alive. Okay, that is the big question, and of course the question on top of that is what makes someone truly happy, as cliche as it is. Um, but those questions have to be addressed, and it isn't a matter of just saying love yourself, because love yourself is the saying you all you have to do is love yourself is the equivalent of giving someone a quantum physics book and they have a test coming up. You give them a deadline for a test and it's next month, and you just say study hard, and then you just leave them. They don't have any teachers or TAs to go to. You just give them this quantum physics textbook with random equations that make almost no sense to the layperson, and you just say study hard, man. If you believe hard enough, you can do anything, and you just strut on off. and, and this poor person is left to sink or swim. Okay, it's a cop out. It's intellectually dishonest. It isn't even true. I mean, there's some parts of confidence that can be looked at from an objective point of view, but it's such a vague phrase just to love yourself. Well, why? Why should I love myself? Is that person even in a place to love themselves? Now, you can look at the cases I gave just a few minutes before and say, well, those people love themselves and that's why they're charismatic. That's why they have the recipe for success. That's why I want to be like them. Okay, but even then, you have to keep dissecting. Okay, when it comes to the matters of the heart and mind, when it comes to philosophy, spirituality, and psychology, there is just no building Rome in a day. Okay, I mean, you have someone that seems happy, right? But what if that person who even seems charismatic and personable, that has a good following, has it based off of an inflated ego a bubble that can be quickly be popped, right? So if you go into this self-esteem thing thinking the reason why I do everything is because I want to look cool and I want to be admired, right? You're again back where you started because it's predicated on how many people are admiring you. So the snake is eating its tail. The moment you start thinking in an egoistic and maybe even narcissistic way, if you only have the view count that I have, for example, um, your confidence will go down, and so that's the problem. And if you do strike gold, it's only a matter of time before either someone outdoes what you do, or you realize that you're not as unique as you thought you were. Okay, and that's the next layer of problems with the popularity. There's the mainstream culture, which is utter garbage, which is, I watch literal late night shows with empty platitudes and terrible jokes and political satire that's just awful. Slash, I watch music videos till I throw up with like twerking and Kesha and all this stuff. Or that's the current mainstream, and it's just turning into more of a circus. Um, there's also below that there's some people that fill their heads with fiction. They watch Netflix. They watch HBO. They play video games. They watch anime. They watch movies. Not much book reading going on, but there is some. Um, there's a small short story community, and there are some audiobooks. So they fill their heads with that. but that's the mainstream, and that can all be taken away. Okay, that is a constantly changing money making machine. And then just look at the, if if you actually look at the tabloids, which in my opinion are more reputable than any mainstream news by a degree of to the third power, um, isn't it true that celebrities have miserable lives, that they're always complaining, that they too are stuck in the machine of needing to be validated by tons of people, right? And there's another dimension to why this is an empty way of looking at the world, which I'll get into later, and which I'll save for my next broadcast. But I'll save that for later, which is the extreme romantic and sexual neurosis we have, and which is the more I look at it, actually pretty common sense. If you spend a lot of time in prayer, you realize everything's really connected to this just false paradigm. But that's I'll save that for later. But that is another the problems of people's loneliness that still persist when they're popular, is another sign that this is not the way to go. So below that strata is the counterculture. All right, there are countercultures that are blossoming right now, which are, in my opinion, more always more edifying uh, than the mainstream, because it involves people that have their own opinions, or at the very least believe in an ideology that is exciting and new and got a new car smell, um, that they kind of get a rush of being different, which is a good place to start. It's a good place to start in terms of individuality. You have to have that sense of, I'm not going to just follow the herd. It's boring to follow the herd. It's pointless. And the probability of me being on top of the herd is so small. And then once I'm on top of the herd, everyone will envy me and try to destroy my reputation and drag me down, or destroy. Yeah, that's what happens. People get envious and they try to do character assassinations, or I become mad with power and I become some kind of deviant who eventually gets in trouble for something I did because I went mad with power and fame. Dark road to take. But even within these new counterculture circles, you have to evaluate that. Okay, there's all kinds of countercultural circles. There's stuff in the music scene. There's the advent of internet radio. Um, Really, I remember when internet radio came out. YouTube recommended is doing a pretty good job as well for recommending new kinds of music. I think that they've left that more or less alone, um, and I enjoy doing that. There's always a new genre of music. And they're not as popular, but they're somewhat popular. And to me, it just seems as if the less popular stuff again is better. Like, there's always this saying within rock communities that like the band's always best with their first two albums or when they're a garage band, and then um, a band eventually either sells out, which is still questionable, or they stagnate. Okay, there's also similar cultures within identity politics, which is pretty much garbage, with the exception of a few ideologies. Excuse me. I like the ideology I'm in, which is spiritual monarchism, um, which is what the pastor at our church said, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I know that there are Catholic monarchists who dream of having a king with like a constitutional Christian kingdom, um, but I like spiritual monarchism because it sounds cooler and it's true. It's a mystical. It's actually it's very interesting. This, when you add that adjective. Um, but there's the identity politics people. There's also, again, within underneath all of the different avenues of life, there's countercultural elements to the current culture, and that's always been the case as well. There's always been countercultures to current culture throughout history. This is we have to have an Ecclesiastes moment, okay? Ecclesia the passages of Ecclesiastes, if you read that part of the Bible, address the existentialism of the reality of human beings not like things just go in a circle. What goes around comes around. There's nothing really that new outside of God, right? That's the point of Ecclesiastes, and there is some ingenuity, but in terms of the way people behave, there's always been just quality and goodness and superficiality and evil, and there's always been this constant three-way fight between these three elements. So, looking at the counterculture, there's a problem there too. And what happens in the counterculture is that people get so engrossed in being countercultural that they make that their own trendiness. They become conformists to that understanding. And this happens everywhere. This happens even with people I agree with. And we always have to keep ourselves in check. To critically think is important. And when you really are honest with yourself, often you will repeat what you've heard from other people. And the internet has definitely made that worse. We often Google things. We often don't critically understand in depth what we've read. And it often shows when, if we're challenged on that belief, we eventually dismiss that person in a rude way, or our syntax, what we're using, how we're writing it out is just clearly copied and pasted from somewhere else. Now, I'm going to save that for later because that whole copy paste thing needs to be looked at too. But going back to what I said with the music scene, I see people bash bands, especially the rock scene, for not being what they were supposed to be. But sometimes these bands sound better, to me personally, in experimenting. And again, experimenting can often quickly boost someone to great fame and success. So it's even that whole idea of, oh, don't sell out, don't be like a mainstream. Well, that's got to be careful with that. What if you're judging someone too harshly and they genuinely want to try something new? So that's my problem with all of this. That's why you always have to give people a benefit of a doubt and test the fruits of what they're doing, and being honest with yourself. And then you have another problem where I said people copy paste what they see as to be true, especially in the philosophical and religious arguments. You see people often getting mad, and they're like, "You're just copying what other people are saying." Okay, and sometimes that's a valid point, and it should be used. But and sometimes I've used that point. I'm like, yeah, okay, like, look, I've seen you retweet this from other people before. You're not fooling me, and let me ask some questions, and if you can actually respond to them without calling me dumb and acting pseudo-intellectual, I will concede. But at the same time, there are some things that should be copied, okay? And that's the next problem. There's also this paradigm of total freedom, total subjectivity, total relativity in the arts in music, in thought, that can be dangerous as well. Um, if someone tells you that, if something is leading to you to a self-destructive habit, or it does not line up with the natural law, okay, um, and you're doing it because you are so hell bent on becoming something new and avant-garde. Oh, look at me. Yes, this is my, you know, then that needs to be assessed as well. Okay. Case in point, I think the one aspect that sometimes people think it's okay to do that is in when it comes to capitalistic ventures, when it comes to being competitive, making a new product, right? That is a little bit that's okay. It's okay in my opinion to you have people with different copyrighted material and different inventions, and people get patents, and then someone takes that invention and tweaks it a bit. They tweak it a little bit, and it's a little bit it's taken a step forward a little bit. That's okay, okay, and that's what you usually find. I once took a history of science course, and the interesting thing about it was science is often advanced by that little innovation by smaller scientists, and the big stuff is practically divine intervention. It's very rare to have someone have such a blow away scientific discovery. um, I think there's still some stuff out there that will be uncovered in science, which are amazing. We're getting very interesting waters with astrophysics, quantum, the uh, subatomic particles, and things like that. There's still some stuff to be said there, and of course, jetpacks, and there's always some new gadget you can make, and that people are making. But that can be a good thing, and even when it comes to art and literature and it's like you have these people that in modern art, oh my gosh, like I'm not sure if some of them are just cheapskates, and I know that some of them have been busted to be like absolute frauds that want to make lots of money off of this, this stuffy, arrogant, overly critical. It's just a weird zone in modern art. But there's also people that I feel as if they may be trying to be too original. I mean, you don't have to be the new Van Gogh. You don't have to do that. The fact is that there's a balance when it comes to this stuff, and there are certain things that make people's souls come alive. It feeds their soul, and it's within a particular strata. It's not just like abstract for the sake of abstract. Okay, I mean, the pictures above for me, for example, I took there's some artistic pictures that have been made. This one was made for my show, a thumbnail. This one I just like. I have this recommended background pictures on my computer, my MSI gaming laptop, and I don't know where they get these photos from, but they're these beautiful photos of different landscapes. They must have some algorithm to find the highest rated photography, right? And this is a nice like prayer card thing that I found. And of course, there are people saying, "Well, I don't like night sky photos," or "I don't like this." Okay, it's not my cup of tea. But generally, I think people like looking at a beautiful picture of the sky. I think that there are certain things that just resonate with us. Okay, it resonates with the soul and the heart that we need to go back to. Okay, there's something about um, particular art styles and painters. Like for example, the painters Raphael and Michelangelo and Da Vinci. They use similar paint techniques, and I'd also say that. although they had their own little styles, they had a generally the same style. You know, you had the Baroque, classical, romantic composers, right? They were unique, but they still used some similar musical theory. Um, so it's the quality is still more important than originality. Okay, and there's something, for some reason, we are drawn to some things, not others, on a general basis. And I honestly think a lot of people lie to themselves for the sake of looking good in counterculture. Um, and I see it with people with their opinions on even like entertainment. You ask them these questions, even on simple things like TV shows, and they're like, "Oh, well, I haven't." You know, they have this deer in the headlights um, look. You know, even when it comes to like writing analysis, there are these fedora wearing, you know, hipster wannabe smart people, and they complain about particular fictitious stories because they're like, well, there's these plot holes. This is a phrase that a lot of people use, especially in the nerd community, saying, well, that story is a plot hole, and that means it's badly written. A plot hole is something that is not explained to the point where it makes the story fall apart. It's the difference between like a non-restrictive phrase in a sentence and a restrictive phrase. A non-restrictive phrase or a descriptive phrase is like you have two commas around it, and then the sentence continues. And the restrictive phrase is essential. A mystery story or a story that's trying has mysterious attributes cannot tell you everything in order for it to be a mystery or suspense story. And then they complain about it, and I'm like, you have to chill a bit, because if that's the genre we're going for here, a plot hole is a plot hole is a particular inconsistency that completely destroys the fabric of the story and makes it like kind of nonsensical. It does not mean that information is left out. So that's just one random example of what I'm talking about. You know, people say they're these experts, but they're not really. Um, and then lastly, when it comes to religion and philosophy, which is where we're reaching about the third way point here. The third part of the show is about the metaphysical side, as I usually like to do. I saw this in the atheist takeover of everything when I was in college, and Jonathan Bagot, who I really like, he's one of my favorite YouTubers when it comes to talking about this kind of stuff. Ooh, I should have put up his artwork. It looks really cool. Maybe I should do it next time. His symbology artwork. I better hurry up and do that. I forgot it. I knew I would forget something. Um, anyway, you can look up his artwork. Um, it's called Cos Symbolic World. He called this the Cosmos drawing. He made this symbological painting. He actually does icons for the Orthodox Church, but he it basically um, encapsulated the entirety of the meaning of the Bible, and it has so much symbology of light and darkness, and life and death, and the Eucharist, and Adam and Eve, and the new Adam and Eve. It's called the Cosmic Mountain. Okay, look up the Cosmic Mountain by Jonathan Bagot as an example of what I'm talking about. And I have a hoodie of it. I can't. Well, actually, let me get the hoodie here. Okay. Yoink. It's gonna be hard to see, but I had to get a hoodie of this thing. I mean, it was badass. I had to get it. Um, okay. Can the light capture this? Okay, they're up. All right, so this is an example. I liked it because the black background contrasting with the white really shows the Eucharist and the tree of life thing, right? And so what he's trying to explain there is that the Word of God And what the messages of Jesus Christ and the church apply to our daily lives in symbology. You know, we experience things that pertain to life and death and rebirth and all these things that we need God to enter into. Oh my gosh, gotta close the blinds now. That's what I get for trying to be edgy and showing you a hoodie. And um, it's a beauty. You know, art is beautiful for a reason, and it has to do with the fact that we yearn for some higher thing that is reflected through the universe. That is the thesis of most religions. It's a thesis of faith. It's a thesis of hope and love. It is not a thesis of evidence. So here come the atheists, and they're like, "There's no evidence." They shove down their own scientific, inappropriately scientific analysis of something that's not supposed to be analyzed by science. You know, like that's the whole point. The whole point of these theological ideas is to go towards the concepts that we cannot answer by science, or that science can only kind of show a picture of. You know, now. The other side of it is there is a lot of BS going on dismissing miracles. There is yet to be an atheist who disproves the Shroud of Guadalupe and the miracle of the sun. There's just with so many witnesses and scientists are baffled, and they do this little cowardly thing of uh, there's no explanation scientifically for it. Doesn't mean that there's a religious explanation. God exists, right? You know. But then, of course, they'll say that there's multiple universes, there's parallel universes, and there's aliens, and there's different dimensions and all of that. But they cannot accept um, faith. There's an arrogance there, okay? And so that whole thing was just a bunch of repeating what other people were saying and being arrogant and showing off and trying to seem smart. They were the Renaissance men of my collegiate years. Okay, they really were. You know, they just want to show off. Oh, look at me! You know, I'm so cool. I have some new. It's another form. It's like trying to play Buddha. It's another form of enlightenment which you're using, which you're lazy. It's not, you didn't really make it up yourself, but you just came to that conclusion because it gets you some brownie points. It makes you look smart. It's whatever all the smart people are doing. Yeah, so that's another example of what I'm talking about. Um, and that's another form of chasing popularity. It was just it's just out of control in every regard, and it's poisoning everything that could be good. It's poisoning so much so many good discussions which should be had, um, that are poisoned by people that just are these like bullies that want to hear themselves talk, and then they shut down anyone that has a humble disposition that just wants to find out some truth, wants to ask some questions. And there's nothing wrong with being a disbeliever if you're humble about it, if you're actually seeking, you know. And we all have our own doubts. It takes a while to figure out life, if you ever do, let alone God. Okay, but this is where you have to step out of all of these voices of telling you what to do, including the overly skeptical, overly countercultural, and individualistic stuff. And you have to just take a deep breath and walk outside, look at the stars and the moon, and ask yourself, is there something I missed? Okay, is there something I missed? And am I supposed to, who am I? You know, I'm spending all of my time looking at this stupid screen. I'm spending all of my time on YouTube. I'm talking as if it's myself, because right now I'm looking at a screen. So I'm putting myself. I've spent all my time looking for people's opinions, looking for what other people tell me to do. Is it because I'm I'm not okay with myself? Is it because I am not confident in the inner talents and that I have been that have been written into me because That's part of the image of God, our personality, our talents, and other things that I've gone along with, whether it be morally or artistically or culturally, that deep down I am not happy with doing. But I'm afraid. I am led by fear. I am afraid. There's like a demon that is keeping me. There's something in me that knows that I will be a wreck if an EMP bomb hits the United States and all electronics is gone, or a coronavirus lockdown happens, the likes of which we've never seen before. I am a cooked goose. I cannot be alone with myself. Okay? I can't do it. I need my stuff and I need my opinions and I need all this and that. That needs to be tackled. Okay? That needs to be addressed. And that is behind the biggest part of why um, we crave popularity. Because you're looking at it only from the stance that you've been fed, which is the transnational, globalist, corporate looking, and you're a number way of looking at things. You're a number and you have to have a successful life on paper. Oh, there's been no despotic regimes that have used that at all. And that's all you are. And if you don't succeed or if you're not cool, that's it for you, you know. And of course, you don't even ever want to look at death itself or homelessness or anything like that, right? So that's the problem. You will really only now all the other things like look be finding new hobbies, unique things to do, friends that you can trust. That's great, and that's definitely a stepping stone to healing. You definitely should find that if you can. But at the end of the day, we all have to go through a dark night of the soul. We all do. Okay, the dark night of the soul, which I haven't gone through. The dark night of the senses is the starting point, but it is a spiritual experience given by God that purifies you of all attachments, and that you will only be attached to God alone. And that sounds very magical and like, okay, why? That just sounds like, what? But again, I'm not giving you just a cookie cutter theological copy paste. Oh yeah, I'm a Christian and therefore I believe in the dark night of the soul and we all have to be purified. There is a way to look at why we have to go through suffering, why we have to go through existential problems, why we have to struggle with ourselves. And we can see that in the falling apart of our modern society and our modern psychology. We can see it even though I'm not perfect at all and I have yet to master any of this. I can at least tell you I see what the problem is. Where can we truly, the soul, you have to find terms, okay? That's the problem with Bible only. That's why people are turned off to religion. Okay, the reason why people are turned off to religion is because there's such little depth, and it's been abused so much that you look at like my stuff here and you're just rolling your eyes. Oh yeah, Jesus tells you to be good, be a good little boy, right? Okay, but when you actually take the time to read some of this stuff, you start to realize how it coincides with the psychological, cultural, and moral realities of today. And the person you need to check out who gets into that and sadly passed away and very few people picked up the torch was Archbishop Fulton Sheen. Check out what his talks on psychology, because psychology has almost become a new religion. And you'll see the crossing over of God and spirituality and the need for grace and psychology, like Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, right? And the subconscious and all that interesting stuff there. There is a crossing over, and I'm glad that this channel. I'm glad to be part of this group because Thomas and I do like exploring that crossing over. It's very needed. Can God heal these issues, and these are the biggest issues, because the soul is the true self. That's what it means to have your soul redeemed by Jesus Christ, okay? Something happens mystically within the soul when you open up to him and you pray and you attend the sacraments. There's some there's some light that's warmth that floods your body when you're praying, and it's all kinds of stuff can happen where you can actually feel God turn you, make you alive, make you more confident, make you more joyful and peaceful. And it has nothing to do with how many views you got on YouTube, right? It's completely independent of that. And you can feel it. You actually can feel it happen in your soul. Now, it takes a while to get that for him to, it takes a lifetime or more to completely, have your true self be molded into what God wants, to where you'll be happier. And it's pretty painful. But at least, even for starters, I believe that even in the beginning phases of transformation, and when you're really honest and you're in prayer, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. You say, yes, the soul is the true self. And that's why I always say the metaphorical, like when people say don't sell your soul or you've lost your soul, when people say it in a secular way, um, they're actually onto something. Are you losing your soul if your entire the, all of your joy and happiness and who you are is based on this screen here? You're a sponge, right? You're a sponge, and that's all you've been. And once there's a new paradigm, once there's a new shift in what's considered enlightened or cool or fashionable, then you the sponge, your SpongeBob SquarePants, you just conform to that. That says that yes, there's a problem. There's this problem with the soul within modern society. All right, that to me that it isn't as complicated as we think. I don't think it's as abstract as we think it is. Of course, the other side of it is, and that I guess usually when you hear about losing your soul or gaining your soul, it has to do with sin and virtue and vice. But I think the sin here would be just no faith. The sin is despair. So there is a sin. It's not having a connection to anyone higher than who you are. Okay, and because you don't have that connection, everything else gets disordered, and you're in a stormy ocean. Your mast has fallen off, and you're just going with wherever the winds take you, right? Um, so that's the issue here. You shouldn't need to be on social media to be happy. You shouldn't even need, even without social media, you shouldn't need to have like all of your needs met, your comfort zones met, all the perfect friends, because the whole point is that there's the self discovery where that needs to happen, where you can actually be okay with yourself, and God is there to help you with that. Now, that's where the topic of religion and spirituality comes in, because we're still not done yet. Which religion is right? Which philosophy is right? And I've made a few awake shows on that topic, and I will make more. But um, at the very least, I hope I can show you why this is important. Why we have to break this blue pill matrix of what's going on, especially with the young. Um, and I know I was said that the loneliness issues, especially with relationships, um, is what I would say for last, and I will to illustrate my point. Friendship, romance, sexuality, and family all have to do with the face. Okay, and when a child is born and they see the face of their mom and dad, this forms who they are emotionally, and spiritually. It is extremely important. Um, and that is where they get their sense of beauty and awe and wonder. Okay, and then of course, raising the child is very important, in a good way, and in the face, there's things within a person's face. The eyes are the wind of the soul is a phrase, right? Um, when you're with a good friend, that you can truly, you know, uh, uh, you can truly um, play around with and have fun and be honest with without being triggered or whatever the politically correct thing people do these days is. It's in the face. It's a very intimate, fleshy thing. This in someone's voice, in their face, and in the disposition they give. Okay, and of course, when it comes to the romantic and sexual side of things, people seek a face of love, a face of beauty. That is what we seek. Okay, no matter who you are. Now, you may be so broken you don't, you tell yourself you don't, or you don't even see that you seek a face within all these things. But in the end, that's what attracts us. And I would say that that's what attracts us to a lot of these celebrity idolized people. It's a very simple thing. There's all these channels now, just pretty girls showing cleavage, and they have no personality. And of course, men being men, they dump super chat donations like crazy, and they make them rich. And of course, the girls with personality are killing it even harder. They're doing amazingly, right? But what does that have to do with spirituality? Well, in at least my faith, we seek the face of God, and that is kind of literal. God is the center of love and beauty and joy, and we believe, just as if we have forces of nature like gravity and electromagnetism, we believe in the world of the eternal, as the philosophers of the Aristotelian philosophers started to look at, and St. Augustine and St. Thomas Aquinas began to look at, where if you have the scientific underlying forces, but you also have spiritual, metaphysical underlying forces. And therefore, if love exists, just as how the universe was created by the Big Bang, so too did the realm of the spirituals created by a greater force. And because you need a greater force to create that greater force must be the highest degree of love and beauty, who is God. Okay, that is the teaser for my next broadcast, which will be on the downfall of online dating and dating in general, and what we can do about all of this. But that sums up kind of my viewpoint. And in that love and beauty, and there's like this resonance within even the universe, like the sky we see. There's something about the sun and the moon and the grass and the trees in these beautiful pictures above me that makes our spirits soar. The heavens proclaim the glory of God, as the passage says. So there is objective beauty, in my opinion, and love. That is what I'm trying to say. There's a narrow path. Maybe that's one way to apply the passage. Straight and narrow is the path, and very few enter. You can't be so abstract and free that you just say, well, it's all relative, man. It's all in the eye of the beholder. There's been some weird art stuff that came from that. But on the other hand, we have to still be able to stand on our own opinions and find our true selves. So the face is my little hint into what I'm trying to talk about, and it summarizes many things, psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually. So, all right, that's the end of my rambling. It seems I didn't get that much uh, comments today, but I did get some viewers, so I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope to talk to you next time. God bless, and have a great rest of the Saturday.